to look at it.
All right, we are right at 7 o'clock, so I'll call tonight's council meeting to order. Karen, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Husnick?
Here.
Councilmember Byström?
Here.
Councilmember Munson?
Here.
Councilmember Valento?
Here.
Mayor Bain?
Here, I'd like to invite everyone to rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, we have an agenda before you this evening. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and our agenda is approved. Our next item this evening is open forum. Open forum is any interested party's opportunity to address council on any topic of their choosing. Do we have anybody here for open forum this evening?
Page was empty.
And, okay, and anybody online, Karen?
No, wait. I have somebody online. Someone named Oscar Blarsu? Blarsu?
Yeah, my name is Oscar Bledsoe.
Oscar, go ahead if you wanted to speak during open forum.
Oh, my first time coming here, so I just want to introduce myself. I'm from Forest Lake, and I just want to be part of the meeting. Hello.
Hold on. Is this supposed to be turned? Oscar, go ahead and try again.
Oh, my name is Oscar Bledsoe. I live in Forest Lake, and this is my first time coming to this meeting. Am I at the right place? I was sent an invitation to come to this meeting. Hello?
Yep, we can hear you. Go ahead. Did you just want to did you just want to be watching the meeting, or did you want to speak during open forum?
Oh, no, I just want to watch the meeting, and I will speak.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah, I'll
okay,
speak.
we're just giving you an opportunity to talk if you wanted.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We are glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, we will close open forum and bring discussion back to council. And we will move on to our consent agenda this evening. Council, for your considerations are items 6A through 6P.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
I would make a motion that we approve items 6A through 6P with the exception of 6E, the minutes from the April 18th council and EDA workshop.
Okay. We have a motion for items 6D and then 6F through P, removing item 6E. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And consent agenda is approved. Moved to the regular agenda is item 6E, the minutes from the April 18th Council EDA Joint Workshop. And I would motion approval of those minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We'll take a second from Councilmember Munson. And so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose?
Abstain.
And one abstention. Motion carries, and we will move on to our regular agenda, and we will start with agenda items 7A. We have a resolution accepting donation for $7,200 from American Legion Post 225 to the police department. And Chief Peterson, I'll turn this over to you.
Yeah, Mayor and City Council meeting members, good evening. What I have for you today is a resolution accepting a donation from the Forest Lake American Legion, Post 225, in the amount of $7,200. I want to publicly thank the American Legion Post and their members for their generous donation to the police department and for their continued support. Staff recommendation is for City Council to accept the donation with gratitude.
Thank you, Chief. And I motion that we approve Resolution 04252203 with gratitude.
I'll second.
And we have a motion and a second from Councilmember Valento. All those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Our next item this evening is Resolution 04252204 for the spring fling donations. And Jamie.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Before you is a resolution accepting donations for our spring fling event. And I'd like to thank the Forest Lake Lions Club for a $500 donation, Bolton and Mink for a $200 donation, Keller Williams Premier Realty Hoff Real Estate Group for $100, and both Big Apple Bagels and Lakes Floral Gift and Garden for in-kind donations for providing supplies for our event. Just want to thank them for continued support and accept the donations with gratitude.
Fantastic. Thank you. And I would motion that we approve Resolution 04252204 with gratitude.
Second.
Motion and a second from Councilmember Husnick. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. The next item is 7C, the FLA Athletic Facilities Use Agreement. And Jamie, this one's also yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Before you tonight on this agenda item, we have a agreement between the City of Forest Lake and the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association for your consideration of approval this evening. Last year, the city did enter into a one-year contract with the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association for the facilities use agreement. And it was essentially very similar to what you see before you tonight. It was a one-year contract, so therefore it did expire December 31st of 2021. The city staff and representatives from FLA met earlier this year and had a really positive meeting, and both parties agreed that everything went very smooth last year, and both parties were interested in another similar agreement. So everything in this agreement tonight before you is the same. However, the city did add priority scheduling at Cool and Camp and Schilling Park this year, and is favorable to both parties. So with that, this agreement has been reviewed and is acceptable to FLA, and the Parks, Trails, and Lakes Commission have recommended approval of this agreement as well. So therefore, I'm looking for council approval tonight of the facility use agreement between the City of Forest Lake and Forest Lake Area Athletic Association for 2022. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Just open it up for council for any questions you might have, comments. Back. Questions? With this agreement, have we transitioned fully to the facility use committee, or is that happening kind of post-agreement go forward? I know we're kind of in transition.
Yeah, so good question. We did have our first athletic facilities advisory committee meeting February 8th.
Excellent.
We do have our second one scheduled for this Thursday, April 28th. I think this second meeting here is still our last transitional one as we gear up for the spring season, so it's more of the logistics, but then we are scheduled again, quarterly, so we'll have one in July and one, I believe, again in September. So we are continuing with that, and I think after that, our July one, we're really looking at capital improvements and continue building that group.
Good. All right. Any other questions or items? I'm ready for a motion if anyone's ready to make one.
Mayor Bain, I'll make a motion to approve the Forest Lake Area Athletic Association Athletic Facilities Use Agreement.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? And motion carries. Right, our next up on the agenda is bringing back for council's consideration the room use fees and adoption of the amended room use policy. And Karen, do you want to walk through some changes since council last discussed this?
There are, thank you, Mayor Bain. The last look at this was, I believe, 2 council meetings ago, or not 2 council meetings ago, 2 would have been, because we had a couple that were canceled, but we took a look at this. Councilmember Byström had asked for some additional information to bring back, take a look at other communities, see what they were doing in terms of having resident versus non-resident use. And so I don't think there was a disagreement on an increase in the fees. We haven't had an increase on the fees that we've had since, I think, the beginning of this policy, which was 2014 was the last I could find. The fees have been $30 per hour. When I went through and took a look at the comparisons of various cities, you'll see on the page 2 of this after the memo, it shows all the different cities. Those are our comparison cities that we usually have as a standard. I think the only one that was lower than us was Lino Lakes. But most of the rest, I believe the rest of the other cities were all had greater fees than we did. So we're really falling in the low part of that category. And what I did when I compared was to take, it was kind of all over the board, as you can imagine. There's different size rooms, there's different types of rooms. So I tried to get the best comparison that I could with rooms that would be like, I guess, a community room style, what we have upstairs, and then what we also have over at the senior center. So it would be, so the fees that you're seeing on that comparison chart are comparable room sizes and capacity sizes to what we have. Our room sizes and capacity sizes are shown on the last page of the policy. It has an application page that I included. So you can see what the comparable room sizes are. The rooms that I used was the community room, and then over at the senior center, I used their large multi-purpose room. So the capacities goes from 50 to 120 people without social distancing. On the application, I've also included what would, we could consider social distancing space as well. What I came up with, I just took a look at the other fees of communities and thought something reasonable was $50 per hour for residents and $75 per hour for non-residents. We've always had a 3-hour minimum for use on those rooms, so I kept that the same. That's pretty standard. In fact, most of the places will have a half a day minimum, or even they'll do a whole day rental. So you can see some of them are, well, there's 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 to 8 hours. So we weren't off with our 3-hour minimum. That was pretty standard. And then the $150 deposit, we've always had a $150 refundable deposit. I don't know that that's necessarily always been followed. It's been kind of at the discretion of the city to say whether or not we should charge a deposit. Since I've been here, I haven't asked for a deposit from any of the parties that have utilized the room. It hasn't seemed to be a problem. So, but that is part of the policy that has been, and so I just left that in as a continuation of the update on our policy. That pretty much goes in the same, it falls in line with the other cities with a damage deposit that's refundable. So that's what I came up with. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. There was some changes in the policy with the fees, change with, I think, a little bit more clarity on the language in terms of the use of the rooms and then the groups or organizations utilizing those rooms. So we kept the community room upstairs as more of a business type use, and the senior center would be more like a party type use. So for example, a graduation party or birthday party or something like that. So, and it's a little bit more clear on the language of who can utilize those rooms. So it'll be nonprofit community groups, the schools, school district, government agency, business use, and then our associated partners that would be utilizing the community room upstairs. All private parties would be referred over to the senior center.
Thank you, Karen, that's helpful. Just quick point of process for next steps. So the resolution before us has fees adjusted. Do we then have to adjust the fee schedule and bring that back in its entirety? So would that be a next step?
Yeah, so the resolution would be to adjust the fees effective immediately. That would come back to the that would be added to the fee schedule. So with the fee schedule, what I was trying to avoid was having to bring that back into council multiple times, because it's an ordinance. So we do have some other changes that will be coming with that fee schedule. This is one of them. We have the airport rates that will be coming forward. I believe there is park dedication fees at some point that will be coming forward. So there is going to be some additional changes to the fee schedule ordinance. But this would make the fee change effective immediately along with, so you would be adopting the policy and then you would be adopting this resolution for the fees separately.
Thank you. And then one other question, assuming we pass this tonight, is that then effective immediately and community groups are able to schedule? And
Yes.
I know we've got some interest from Lake Association, so, okay. Any other questions? I wasn't here for the last time this was up, and so I don't have full context on what those questions were, but any other items that we should be discussing?
Well, I think the general concern was just the resident versus non-resident. You know, we want to be sure that we're giving consideration to folks that are in this community and pay taxes here. And so I'm glad to see that change. Again, wasn't opposed to an increase. I know that it's been a while, but just wanted to see, see an effort there to give consideration to our citizens.
I also wanted to point out too, it says that private parties will be directed to the senior center. They'll also be directed to the YMCA. So we do have an agreement with the YMCA on use of their space. There's certain criteria that goes along with that, but it was part of the development agreement with them when that was built. And so there's certain hours, days and hours, to a maximum, I believe, of 20 hours per week. And then it's at the discretion of, or does not conflict with the YMCA's scheduled programming that they have. So any private party that would like to check with the YMCA, they can do that too. I also have, in case there is, in case we're not available, in case the rooms are booked, I do have a list that I keep that has all the other event centers in the Forest Lake area. So I do have other places I can refer people. Of course, those would be at whatever the cost is for those rooms. We can't control that, but just trying to make sure that there's all kinds of options for anybody that would want to utilize the rooms.
Any other questions or discussion points for tonight? Otherwise, resolution is on page 129 of your packet, if anyone's ready for a motion.
Mayor Bay and I make a motion to adopt resolution 04-25-22-05, a resolution adjusting the 2022 room rental rates for the Forest Lake City Center and Senior Center conference rooms.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. That concludes our regular agenda this evening. We do have a couple of items for discussion. As council moves into this discussion phase of our
Mayor May.
meeting tonight. Go ahead.
We would need you to also adopt the policy as a separate vote.
Oh, thank you. So we passed resolution.
That just is for just the fees.
Yep, understood. So council, page 125 of your packet has the Forest Lake Conference Room Use Rules and Policy. And I would motion that, or I would move that council approves the Forest Lake Conference Room Use Rules and Policy.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? And motion carries. All right, that concludes our regular agenda. And we can move on to our discussion items. Discussion items are going to be in a workshop format. Anything that is discussed in these workshop items is for discussion and working purposes only. Anything that we talk about that needs official vote will come at a future council meeting for official consideration. And as we move into that workshop portion, 8A, the moratorium on wetland banks. Nathan, I think you're walking us through this.
Good
Welcome.
evening, Mayor, members of the council. So yeah, recently it came onto staff's radar that there may be some interest in establishing wetland banks in the city, specifically in the agricultural district with one thing that we've heard. So staff kind of proactively discussed that type of proposal and the impact of allowing wetland banks in the city. Staff have determined that more thorough review and study is needed to help kind of determine where and if this use would be appropriate in the city. So wetland banks generally are, they're offsite wetlands that are established on effectively high ground. They turn developable land into wetlands, and then this wetland area is actually sold in the form of credits to developers when they come in and have to mitigate wetlands for their development. So these wetlands, by convert usable land into wetlands, that is a permanent thing. You cannot like go back and reclassify it as not a wetland. So that's why this is such an important issue to be considerate of. So staff have basically, are basically requesting that the council consider a one-year moratorium on this specific use, and that will allow time for some study to figure out where and if this would be appropriate in the city. So the process for a moratorium is, it starts with the council authorizing staff to study this particular use. That would be via resolution. Next, the council would enact an interim ordinance which would prohibit wetland banks for up to a year. Staff would then study this use and bring findings back to the council, in addition to any proposed ordinances as drafts for the city to review. And then you have your year-end expiration of the moratorium. So really it's a fairly simple process, but something to be very considerate of. So I guess that's all we have formally prepared for you. Happy to take any questions.
Sure seems to make sense to give plenty of time for staff to look at this thing and decide one way or the other. I mean, that's my take on this, and bump into something without knowing all the facts.
Do we not have any, so our current ordinances, are we just silent on it? We don't address it at all?
Your Honor, members of the council, we have looked at this, and it's my opinion that it's prohibited anywhere in the city under our current zoning code. We have a general rule of zoning that it's prohibited unless it's permitted as a permitted or conditionally permitted use.
Understood.
And wetland banking is not listed anywhere, nor is it sufficiently similar to anything that we have that we would call this a use that's covered anywhere in our code. Therefore, it's not. Our recommendation was to study and move forward with a moratorium, really for two reasons. One, to be transparent with anybody who's interested and be very clear that we're not allowing this right now until we figure this out. And number two, to avoid any kind of arguments, creative or otherwise, that maybe there's some way to shoehorn something into the code that the city attorney's office certainly doesn't agree with. So, and then the other thing I would make a point about is, and I know it's in the memo, but the moratorium, it's not for a year. It's until we're done with the study and we come back to you with a recommendation and you make a determination when we have a year in which to do that. So if the council got some guidance from a study yet this season and was ready to make a decision, we could implement the new rules, whatever you choose, as soon as we're ready. We don't have to wait a year.
Do you have an estimate, do you have a thought of kind of what that timeline of that project review might look like, where you think it might be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but X number of months, or is that still under consideration of what does that timeline look like?
Have you thought about this?
I haven't really put as much thought to the timeline. It is a fairly narrow scope of the study, but I guess I don't really have any comments specifically as to how long it would take at the moment.
Is part of the study to look at neighboring communities to see, I mean, is that part of what you would be included in what this might look like?
My question too.
Your Honor, city attorney and planner often work very closely together. This time we're really like almost sitting on each other, sorry. The big picture of the study is to determine whether you want to allow it if you want to allow it, where in the city does it make sense from a zoning perspective to allow this type of use? And then thirdly, if you're going to allow it, under what conditions? For example, you may have sort of a free market idea about this. We find a good spot and people can sell their land for it. You may have some regulations about it being allowed, but only for developments that are happening here in the city. So we're moving our wetlands rather than creating wetlands for some other community to develop. The use of what other cities are doing, I think, may be of limited help here, because the geography that you have in Forest Lake is Forest Lake. And you have your own set of, complex of wetlands. You have your own amount of high ground in various areas that are developing, and those are really geographically unique to this city. So we may look at other cities for guidance about how they're writing laws, but in terms of the policy that the council needs to make a decision on, I'm not sure that will be a heavy part of the study.
This is unique. I mean, I've not heard of this before, so I'm gonna do a little deep dive on my own too, and maybe Nathan, reach out to you or whomever. Are there any benefits to a city for this at all? It doesn't appear to me on the surface, so.
So yeah, wetland banks, yeah, I think Ryan can maybe address the sort of the geographical nature.
Just to add some comments, kind of why we're here is some of the areas that are potentially under consideration are very important to your future growth and development of your community, which lies into future zoning, future land use, transportation plans, utility plans, and all that. There's probably a lot of other areas in the community that might make sense. All of our developments that are currently going on, yes, they are requesting wetland bank credits and seeking those elsewhere. If there were somewhere else that may be applicable in the community to allow that, then that'd be something that could be processed in the future if those areas are identified. But in some of the areas that we're talking about now or within your MUSA boundary, your future land use is obviously got some critical zoning in the future that if you would allow this to happen now, you basically wouldn't very limit your development, and you kind of would be left with what you have in the south part of the city now. That's why we're suggesting this now, so we can look at that. And maybe that is ultimately where you guys want to go, and you don't want to see some of that stuff that's been outlined very clearly in the comprehensive plan that was just done a couple years ago. So that's where we're at. We deal with it on road projects too. So it's stuff that's needed, but the location needs to really be clearly thought through and what applications make sense.
Are we sometimes a purchaser of wetland credits?
Yeah.
And so where?
Water plant treatment
We see that come through on a project, and I think we just we'll purchase wetland credits and that solves our problem, but we aren't necessarily thinking about
So
where are we purchasing those? Like where does that wetland sit?
other banks that are in the area.
But outside of our community,
Correct.
right? So, okay. Are they in Minnesota?
Yes, some are. Some aren't.
The wetland bank market is just
Got very low supply.
Hey, you're just trading one wetland for another.
Right.
Basically what it amounts
At a ratio.
to. At a ratio.
At a ratio,
What,
at a
2 to 1
premium,
or-
right?
What is the ratio, 2 to 1 or something like
At
that?
minimum 2 to 1, sometimes you get a little higher depending on the category and type of wetland and or again, where you're purchasing it from. Some banks already have different set rates off.
Right. And so for certain property owners, it could potentially be a lucrative, for an individual property, there could be an argument on why that might be an attractive path.
It would just be a quick opportunity to make some money and walk away from what you own. Just like some people alternatively look at solar gardens and wind
Right.
energy too, so it's those other options.
Other good questions? Any other questions?
No question, but I would just agree with Councilmember Husnick and Byström that it seems to make sense that a study and to be able to give the Planning Commission what they would need in terms of making decisions moving forward.
I agree. I think we move slowly. We've got to understand the impact here.
Agree.
I agree. Would you be contacting the watershed districts in the study? I don't know if that's, I would assume that would be necessary.
Not necessarily, although we could communicate with them on a wetland bank. But really what the city is looking at is this a use that's really a good idea in various future areas that are developing? So the watershed's not gonna have as much of information that we might find useful in terms of feedback, but yeah, absolutely, we could contact them if there's specific questions relating to wetlands and wetland banks.
And I guess this might be for the study too, but do they typically put a wetland bank close to other wetlands? Or,
I know that there's a geographical component to where they're located. I don't know, maybe Ryan, if you know the answer to that.
The geology has to match what is going to actually result in a successful wetland. So if you, typically when you do a wetland bank, you got to then go through a number of years before they actually approve and accept that as a wetland. Some of those mitigation or a 5-year mitigation period. So if you pick a spot that has very poor soils, or just all the things don't fit there, you're going to struggle to actually achieve approval of it. So they'll do a lot of, typically prior to constructing one of those, they'll do some hydrology reviews and soil testing in the area to know what they're already dealing with in order to have a successful wetland created. And yeah, they can be next to existing wetlands. Existing wetland could be expanded. So if you had 40-acre parcel and say 10% of it was wetland, in theory, if the soils all or everything lines up, you could have 40 acres of wetland. Boom, that's gone, right? Forever.
When we say forever, who deems, like, who's the guardian of forever? Like, who, what?
So that's where your watershed districts become involved. They're the ones that require mitigation through development. So when you have subdivisions come through, they have to concurrently with the city's process, they're going through the watershed approval process. That's where they're having their wetland mitigation plans reviewed. And that's the stage at which it's identified how much they need to purchase from the wetland bank.
And then is it each watershed, like the who governs that is irreversible for that property, or just kind of who maintains that record that's?
So the Wetland Conservation Act comes into play in Rice Creek Watershed District. Rice Creek is the stormwater permittee and the wetland permittee. In Comfort Lake, Forest Lake Watershed District, they're the stormwater permittee, but the city is the LGU on the Wetland Conservation Act. So we are the permittee on the wetland stuff, and bring together the TEP panel, technical evaluation panel, that's made up of the Corps, the DNR, Washington Conservation District, the watershed, and then the city, or in that case.
I'm sure this is just tip of iceberg questions, but, and more reason to kind of support doing a moratorium and a study.
Knowing the city of Forest Lake just seems like we want to be really careful with it, because I think it's going to be a very limited use for such a thing.
And, right, and we already have a sizable block of wetlands and limited
know, yeah.
developable land.
I'd hate to see it destroying land for 2 times of artificial. That's what it amounts to me. That's just my opinion on it.
Gives me pause.
Yeah.
So let's be really careful.
Process-wise, bring it through Planning Commission first and then come to council. Is that kind of your thought process?
Your Honor, members of council will bring back to council first a resolution directing the study and an interim ordinance that freezes the use.
Okay.
And then we do the study and take the study to Planning Commission and get recommendations for council on what the new policy direction might be.
Excellent. Any other levels of specificity you need from us or points of feedback tonight?
No, I think your questions are helpful in looking to provide additional information. So it will be working closely with the Planning Commission once and if a study is approved.
Good, thank you. This is a little off topic, but it's on the topic of moratorium. So, you think about other permitted uses, and I know Scandia just passed a moratorium on solar farms. Do we have a similar do we have the similar question, or is that already addressed in our zoning?
Solar systems
So-
are
so-
addressed in the city's
They are already.
ordinance currently.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. What else should we not be allowing? So, okay. All right, we will move on to utility billing presentation. Kevin and Kim. It is utility billing season again, and we have transitioned, and a good opportunity to just do a little utility billing 101, and with the thought that many times council gets questions from the public, and if we can have some common background, it's good to have information, and we can maybe be a little bit better customer service agents to residents. So
Sounds
you.
great. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, as the mayor said, this is just going over some of the changes that residents are seeing on their utility bills. There were some rate increases compared from 2021 to 2022. And then just kind of go over that structure and how some bills are calculated on a very basic level. With anything, if there are any questions that residents have on their utility bill, we do encourage them to call our department and we can help answer any of those questions as well. Also, one of the rates that they see on their utility bill is the water rates. And as you can see from the slide from 2021 to 2022, the water rates had about a 7% increase across the board. The utility billing rates for water, sanitary sewer, and surface water management are approved via ordinance by the council, and these were approved in December of 2021. Also note that these are the rates for a standard residential home, standard size meter, which is a 3/4 inch meter. The rates will vary depending if it's a commercial business in town, or if it's residents that this has a sewer connection. So those are questions that we can answer if those type of accounts, if they have questions on those. Also note that the units on here are in per thousand. So the water rates are broken down into 3 different categories. There is a flat fee that residents are gonna see on each quarter bill. And what that means is in the first column there's a minimum units per quarter, which is 5,000, and a cost per that unit. So you can see in 2022, the total cost that a resident will see is $34.92. That is based on 0 usage up to 5,000 gallons of usage for that resident. So those residents will see that charge no matter their usage, even if, for example, they're gone, they're down south, they didn't use any water, that charge will still be showing up on their utility bill. After that, we go into the next tier, as we call it, anywhere between 5,000 and 15,000. The rate per thousand is $4.96, and then anything above that is $5.20. The purpose of this tier system is to promote conservation of water. The less water to use, the cheaper the rate is. So with that, here is a sample of what a utility bill would look like for a resident. On the top right corner, you can see the uses for this particular account was 24. What that means is it was 24,000 gallons. So down below, there's a recalculation of the water based on the rates that were presented on the previous slide. So you can see the first 5,000 gallons were charged at the $6.98 rate. The subsequent 10,000 gallons were charged at the next tiered rate, and the remaining 9 gallons were charged at the highest tier rate to get a total of $131.32, which correlates to the water service charge on their utility bill. The next rate we're discussing is the sanitary sewer rate, again approved via ordinance. Works similar to water, that is based on uses with a couple variations with that. Sewer is based on a winter average use, as we call it, meaning that the maximum, so this first quarter bill is really important to that resident. It sets the maximum rate that they can be charged for the rest of the year. It's really helping out the residents and the citizens of Forest Lake as come spring, summertime, and even in the fall, they're watering their lawns, they might be filling pools, they're using a lot of water that would not necessarily be going down the sewer. So therefore, if we base their sewer rate on all that usage, it wouldn't necessarily be a fair calculation to those residents. So whatever their sewer bill is in this quarter is at maximum that they can be billed for the rest of the year. So what that means is if they go over that amount, it goes back down to that maximum. If they use less than that maximum amount, they will be billed for that lower of the maximum or that amount. And the maximum for sewer for 2022 is $118.29. So again, looking at the same bill as we did for water with the 24,000 units of usage, you can see the bill recalculation came down to $213.39. This was over the maximum amount, so our utility billing software automatically flags that and reduce that sewer service charge down to the maximum amount. So for this particular bill, the maximum that the city set is also the maximum that they can be billed. If, for example, this bill, they only had a $100 bill for sewer here, that would be the maximum that this resident would get for the rest of the year. And then the last one to discuss is a surface water management fee. This one is just a straight fee. It's not based on any usage. The fee was increased from $12 to $12.58 from 2021 to 2022. That's just a flat fee per quarter. So instead of $48 in 2021, the residents will now be paying $50 in 2022. Any questions that Mayor, council members, you have that I can answer?
Just got to make sure that everybody knows that surface water management's rate, that $48 to $50 is an annual
Correct.
change.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're going to be getting emails on it, so.
Yes, it's an annual increase. So per quarter, it's a 50-cent increase that they're going to see.
You're right, okay. Just so we make that very clear to everyone.
And I think there's a lot of confusion, you know, and I do believe we're probably getting better at being able to educate our citizens about, you know, how this is calculated. But I just think anything we can do, you know, nice infographic or, you know, whatever we might be able to do to help our residents understand how their bill is calculated. And what is surface water management? People don't understand what surface water management is. So I come back to that communication piece a lot. I think sometimes if we get ahead of it, we're less likely to have upset citizens. And not everybody reads, but many do. And it's always nice to be able to direct them someplace where it's easy for them to understand, you know, how this is being done. This presentation's great. So
Thank you. And there, I know there's a section on utility bills too. There's a note section on there. We could look to add some communication on there. We could also look at maybe providing a little bit better information on our website as well, just outlining some of these things as well.
Just to make a comment, excuse me, Dave Adams sort of a great outline of what the surface water management is, and we do provide that link to the customers because that is one of the biggest confusions on utility billing is what that actually does.
Yeah.
So there's a link and it describes the whole process and what they're getting charged for.
Yeah, and I know it's there. I'm trying to figure out a better way to share it with our citizens, right? It's there. It's our website isn't great. You know, it's difficult to find things sometimes, and so I'm just a fan of sort of pushing things out rather than pulling people into it, right? If we can get ahead of that a little bit, helping people understand why things are done the way they're done. So, but I do agree. There's information there. So
I know historically when there's been questions, there's kind of been two paths that have had to be reviewed. One was the calculation of the math, and was that correct? And I would hope that now we've got better visibility to that we've brought it in-house, so we no longer have this mystery of what was going to the third-party provider. But then one of the other paths that comes up is people have, you know, inevitably someone has a leak or something that has their usage is actually high because they've got an issue with one of their meters. Is that still, I know there's been some meter replacement effort, and has that tapered off where we're seeing that, or is that still kind of something that you're having to navigate of, is this a calculation issue? And hopefully, again, that has started to subside, or a usage issue?
Kim can probably talk to a little bit more how many questions those are we getting, but with the water meter, the only way it's gonna read water is if there's water actually flowing through the meter.
Right. Yep.
It's almost the reverse that would happen from my experience, and maybe Dave can answer this too, is that it might not be catching all the water that's actually going through the meter. It's actually the reverse that would happen.
Right.
So we do have it when residents call about high uses that we can run reports. We direct them to, a good example is before you go to bed where you're not using water, go down and read your meter. If you wake up in the morning and you didn't use any water and that meter changed, that means that water's running through your meter somewhere. If it, if it's a running toilet, a water softener, or high, are things in the summertime. It even could be an irrigation system where you have your water on and there's a leak somewhere on the irrigation. So there are those things do happen. And we try to point the residents in the right direction with those, where with our, we can't necessarily catch those just through our normal utility process because we're not the ones using the water, we're not the ones there but we are here to help residents through that process. If they definitely think their water usage is high, we have avenues that we can help them see if there is a potential issue with a leak.
Yeah, the concept of the people is that they feel that they should be able to see the leak, and if their toilet isn't running and the water isn't dripping out of their faucet, that, they shouldn't have a problem, but they do. So we have been trying very hard to educate them. We are putting tools in place to be a little bit more proactive on getting some reports out and getting some home testings, just like you said, what Kevin said about the meters, just get them more educated on what to look for and when. And if it is possible, stuff, notify us right away. We've been having people that call us for the beginning of the fourth quarter or the beginning of the third quarter and said, my bill was really high. Not much we can do at that time, but the sooner the better, and just more education is what we're trying to do.
Any other questions?
No,
Mrs.
I just wanted to thank Kim for her nice response to the resident who called or emailed about having been down south all winter, and you just really walked them through that beautifully. So
I actually got a phone call from them too afterward, thanking. So
Oh, good.
oh, good,
yeah.
good.
That wasn't the message. That wasn't what they wanted to hear, so that's good. They were hoping for
Usually
the
never
mistake.
is, but
Yeah. Excellent, good. Council, any other questions? All right, thank you. This was helpful. And reminder also of just the basic access fee is, so thank you.
And I
Thank
do
you.
love the new software and the new bills, and it's just so much
Yeah,
better.
Thank you.
agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we will move into staff updates. We're going to start with Karen, just go around the dais.
We got through the Board of Appeals.
We did.
That's my update.
Bedtime stories with Karen.
That's all I got.
All right, very good. Dan?
Mayor, members of council, just a reminder that May 9th is the next downtown planning meeting. That's when I'll have the full version of the plan available. So that meeting will be held at 5:30. It's again scheduled to be a joint meeting between downtown committee and council. So everybody can see the full downtown plan, and that'll also kick off the public engagement. There'll be another round of public engagement that runs in May. So citizens can offer more comments on the downtown plan, and then adoption will be probably in June or July once they finalize everything from that. So.
Fabulous.
May
Did they expect to have the additional section completed for the southeast quadrant?
Yep, I did speak with Bruce last week about that, and they are on track to get that incorporated into the plan as well. So when they present on May 9th, it'll be everything.
Excellent, very good, thank you. Nathan?
Yeah, speaking of development season is in full swing, it seems. So reviewing a number of different developments that are at some stage of the process. So it's most of what we've been up to.
Very good, thank you. Peter?
Your Honor, no updates.
Patrick?
No updates.
Dave?
Just one quick note. Since the last meeting, Mark Monkowitz has submitted for retirement. His last day will be next Monday. So Mark has been with Public Works since 2004, so 18 years he's been working with Public Works. So I just wanted to take my staff report time to thank Mark publicly for all of his service for Public Works, and he will be missed.
Fabulous. And best wishes to Mark, and thank you to all the residents of Forest Lake. Good luck in retirement. Ryan?
Mayor, City Council, so every 4 years, we're required to do traffic counts on our state aid routes. So you might see some black tubes out and across some of the roadways right now. Not all the roadways are tubed right now. We'll finish doing this the week of May 2nd. But if you do drive past one and nobody's behind you, it's all right to back over and go back over. Or keep circling around and know where that tube is. They'll typically last there for a couple days, 2 to 3 days. They'll keep them in the same location, but then they'll keep moving them through the other locations to the community. Those are very important to our state aid needs. Traffic volume is one thing that scores well, so the more vehicles we get, the only thing that leads to more money. So that's why I was looking for them tonight before I came into town too. Secondly, well, in May, we'll have a couple pre-construction meetings for the lift station project and North Shore Circle Street Utility project. So with that, we'll know more of the contractor schedule and get some communication out to the adjacent property owners and to you guys as well. The May 23rd City Council meeting, I'll be bringing back or forward the MnDOT Master Partnership Contract. So that's basically a contract we do with MnDOT where we can utilize them for plant inspections on state aid or federal projects. Instead of paying a higher rate to a consultant, MnDOT's much cheaper because they're already there doing a number of inspections. So it's one thing we've utilized that, and this is basically a conduit of payment back is what the agreement's for. Also, in a future council meeting, we'll be coming back here shortly with is a discussion on street lighting on Everton Avenue or County State Aid Highway 33. We're closely around 60% plans at this point in time. Still plan on 24 construction, but we want to make sure we get your guys' insight and guidance on that. I know Dave has been working on a lot of stuff with some contractors, and hopefully we can put that together in some sort of a memo or something that you guys could have in front of you. Just give us some guidance on what the intent would be for lighting along that corridor. So that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Ryan. Chief Peterson?
Yeah, Mayor and City Council members, I have a couple of items for you. Once again, I will be telling you that we're going to be taking the speed trailer out. I was fooled when I told you in February or March that we were going to get it out there. The weather once again fooled me, so we weren't able to get it out as often as we wanted to. I think we got it out once or twice on some of those nice days. But going forward, you're going to be seeing it out there, and we're already getting in some requests to have it in certain areas in our residential areas. And secondly, the Bike Patrol program will also be up and running here real soon. And to just give you a little background on the Bike Patrol program from 2021, the bikes were utilized for 136 hours, mostly through the summer months, but some in the spring and fall. And the bikes were rode 303 miles throughout the city of Forest Lake. A lot of those events were July 4th festivities with the parade, the carnival, and the fireworks, but we also utilize them at Night Tea and Night, Safety Camp, Arts in the Park, handing out stickers out on the trails and on the roadways. When we see kids around, giving them, if they're wearing the helmets, they get a Dairy Queen little ticket for a free cone. And we're going to start doing that here in a few weeks. And then we also rode them quite a bit around the residential areas, dealerships, hotels, and businesses due to the catalytic converter thefts that we saw last year. So you'll be seeing the Bike Patrol officers out there on their bikes. Other than that, that's all I have for you, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions for Chief?
Yeah, I know we had some vandalism. Any luck?
Unfortunately, no. We had some little tips that come in once in a while, but nothing.
Nothing major.
No.
There are cameras everywhere. You'd think we would be.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Unfortunately, A lot of times we, get the call after vandalism is done, or graffiti and things like
Right,
that.
right, exactly, so.
But yeah, definitely, if anybody has any information in regards to those things that may be coming up now, it's getting warmer, and unfortunately, we're probably gonna see some more of that, definitely give us a call.
That's kind of the concern is, as it gets warmer and nicer, will that ramp up a little bit? But
Thank you for mentioning speed trailer. It's on my mind. I've just noticed a lot of I think speed everywhere is high, and some of our residential neighborhoods in particular are just getting a fair amount of speed. I've noticed, and I've heard just some complaints about it. So whatever we can do to nip that in the bud, especially as weather gets warmer and people get out more. And
Yeah,
people are
we just got a
walking
few
and biking
complaints
and kids.
this morning, requests for extra patrol, and we get the speed trailer out there, but we also get the officers out there on their downtime. If they have some downtime to park in those areas, have their radar going, stop vehicles if they're traveling too fast, and just being seen sometimes is all we need to slow those people down.
All right, thanks, Chief. Jamie?
All right, Mayor and members of council, we are hosting our annual Spring Fling event on Saturday, May 7th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. here at the Forest Lake City Center. Will be our third time having this event, and it's been really well attended. So we're looking forward to that again this year. So encourage anybody to come out and participate or enjoy the event. So thank you.
Or volunteer.
Or volunteer.
Yeah, where do volunteers sign up?
You can certainly contact me and we'll get you slotted in. So
Okay, fabulous. Thank you.
thank you.
Yep.
As you know, we had the utility billing just go out. There was a couple of flaws with our website. I don't know if you've heard about that, but we got that all fixed, and we do have the copy of all the invoices online for everybody to view when they log into their account now. So we're kind of making a step forward to make everything transparent. So if you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to get a hold of me.
Excellent. Thank you. And Kevin?
One update from me, our financial statement auditor started their annual audit today for 2021. Our plan is to have results presented to council at either their first or second meeting in June, depending on their timeline.
Perfect. Excellent. All right, we will move on to council updates. We'll start at the end of the line here with Councilmember Munson.
No update tonight.
All right, Councilmember Byström.
Just wanted to mention the Board of Appeals meeting, and I thought, at least my assessor did just a really wonderful job, trying to explain, educate, help people understand, what this means in the context of tax increases mostly. So I just wanted to, give him a shout out. Dan Squires was the one that I was with that night. And then just to continue to encourage our citizens to speak up if they have concerns about their valuation. I had a lot of folks at our table that did a really wonderful job coming in prepared to make their case. And it, in a lot of cases, resulted in a change. Even a modest change made a difference. Their voice was heard. A good friend of mine says, doesn't hurt to ask and just come prepared. And I think you'll have an opportunity at adjustment. So, yeah.
Councilmember Husnick.
No updates.
Councilmember Valento.
On Saturday, I participated in the Cleanest City Challenge with the Rotary and forced my fiance to join me. He was thrilled. But him and I picked up a surprising amount, which was 5 garbage bags just from right out here to the lights, and it was shocking.
Wow. Along the trail?
No, just like right out on 61.
Oh, on 61.
Yeah,
Okay.
on the other side.
This side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where you were pointing?
Yeah. And we ran out of garbage bags. So, yeah, we got all the garbage. So,
Big thank you to all the
Thank you
folks
for
that
doing
worked
that.
on that.
Yeah.
How many total did you have, do you know?
I don't. Susan was the one who went and picked all the bags up.
A number of them, I know that.
I don't, no update for me tonight, other than just to echo Councilmember Byström's comments about the Board of Appeals meeting. I had the opportunity to sit with Kathleen Pastorius, who has been our assessor here in Forest Lake for a number of years and just really knows this community. and observed much the same of what you observed of, they are estimates, and where there are estimates, there's sometimes things that maybe aren't considered. It's an imperfect process to assess every single home, and they have to use some broad estimates, and there's always opportunities for individual considerations to at least be asked about. And I think we saw in the adjustments tonight that there were some modest adjustments and also some properties that did have some fairly sizable adjustments. So kudos to everybody for going through that process, and I'm glad we continue to offer that here in Forest Lake. We are going to move into a couple of closed sessions. Does somebody have, Councilmember Munson? Go ahead.
I move to go into closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.05 Subdivision 3B for a confidential attorney-client discussion concerning pending litigation in the matter Lakeview Farms of Forest Lake LLC versus Forest Hills Farm Owners Association and City of Forest Lake, court file number 82-CV-19-4630.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we're in closed session.
Copies of these, like you can copy those, so you,
Yeah.
like you don't need to recreate or retype them, after everyone.
No, no.
Good, how are you?
I don't think they understand the technology a lot.
And she sent me the text. But I said, can you see the press release? I said, you said,
I believe, I will.
See, it's no problem, like, going to
politician. Yeah. I told her, all right, she's still doing it. I said, I will. I said, I just said that we did, but it's didn't respond to Mark. She goes, no, it is the time. But I also hear you saying that she didn't.
He's been on this week's slide.
Hit or miss. Well, what? What's happening here?
find it no better.
I'm supposed to read my.
I recorded the conversation.
I was gonna throw up on you.
Yes.
Oh.
Another day.
One day a day.
All right, we are back in open session, and we are on item number 13 of our agenda, which is the mediated settlement agreement in regards to Lighthouse Lofts. And Pete, can you give council an update, please?
Your Honor, members of council, appropriately, this matter was discussed in closed session. Here in open session, I would look for a motion to approve the mediated settlement, specifically the payment of $275,000 from the city to Lighthouse Lofts in exchange for release of all claims and a dismissal of the lawsuit.
So moved.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second from Councilmember Husnick. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and motion carries. Council, that is our last item on tonight's agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, and we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Good night.